Welcome all of you to virtual academic webinar series brought to you by JSS Academy of Higher Education and Research. As you all know, JSS Academy of Higher Education and Research has been a health and life science prime motive organization deemed to be university in the city of Mysuru, the southern state of Karnataka in India. And ever since its inception in the year 2008, it has been striving hard for quality and excellence in health and life sciences. And also for its endeavor, it has been credited with a lot of accolades, and it has been accredited A plus by NAC. It has been consecutively ranked in the top 50 institutions in India by National Institutional Ranking Framework, currently in the 34th position. And also recently, it has got international accolades as well. In the field of innovation as well, it has got fourth rank in the Atal ranking of institutions in innovation achievement among the private institutions. And recently, the Times Higher Education, the international ranking agency, has rated or ranked JSS Academy of Higher Education and Research based on the sustainable development goals in the top 300 universities in the world, especially in SDG 3, that is good health and well-being, especially being the motive of the university. It has been ranked first in India, and it has got 20th rank in the world. With that, now we will go on to the speaker of today. All of us know the charming personality who is with us today, Dr. B. Suresh, who is the former Vice Chancellor and the founder Vice Chancellor of JSS Academy of Higher Education and Research. And he's also the President of Pharmacy Council of India. Currently, he is also the Pro-Chancellor of the JSS Academy of Higher Education and Research, and a well-known eminent personality in the field of pharmacy education nationally and internationally. A renowned leader, a great motivator, and a superb mentor. And after all these achievements, the most charming thing, why he has got so many followers, is because of his down-to-earth human nature. He's so approachable, and that is why the adoration what he has got from his followers has got us to this platform with so many participants waiting. Sir, we welcome you heartily to this platform.
Thank you very much, Dr. Prashant. Thank you, Dr. Surinder Singh, Vice Chancellor, for joining in this evening. I really appreciate your giving time and coming.
Sir, when we approached you for this particular topic, now you can see that everywhere throughout the world, everybody is panicking about COVID. And when we approached you, and when you gave this intriguing topic, inevitable disruptions and preventable chaos, well, this is contradicting each other in its term, literally. So are you going to be speaking about another talk about COVID?
Though there is going to be an underlying flavor of COVID, but I am not going to talk about science of COVID or how innovation should go or how direction of the research should go or how pharmacists should play an important role in this. No, that's not the objective of this talk. The very idea of choosing this was, I was reading always all along, a lot of news which used to be negative, give sort of feeling of desolation to the people, and everybody was worried what is going to happen next and how things are going to affect us. This was always there. Wherever you see in any of the structures, it was there. I think it was important. I felt that, I wanted to lay an emphasis that disruption is inevitable. It may come in different forms, it is inevitable. But what is possible is to prevent the chaos that may follow that, or be prepared for the chaos. Like, if you are, they say, if you are forewarned, you are forearmed. So that's what I would like our members to understand, that it's not just the present incidents which is there, but they should also be prepared how to handle such situation if it does come. I'm not going to tell them, okay, you start doing yoga, you start doing meditation, you try to do some leadership courses, become this, that. No, that's not the motive. The idea is everybody has got certain qualities in them. Bring that out. Tell them that this is where they should go further. That's what the whole idea of this my talk is going to center on. My dear friends who are there and Perhaps you all can see me, but unfortunately in this particular platform, I cannot see you all. But I can feel you all. I feel that is the way I look at it. And what I would be leading you through is a presentation. The presentation has sort of two parts to it. One part would more talk about the situations and how to handle the situations. The second part is going to be more of examples or the real case studies which I am going to share with you to tell that what I am talking is not all theory, but it is doable and it is possible. So this is the two ways in which I am going to talk to you all this evening. And I thank you all for joining me this evening. The purpose of this, my talking to you all, is to build more confidence in you. And perhaps if whatever we can talk this evening can help you to move towards your goals, I think that is the best outcome I look forward from this talk. Now, this screen, you are seeing all the different newspaper cuttings. I'm sure my screen is visible to all of you. I've shared the screen to you. So Prashant can just come in and say, yes, you are able to see the screen. So I know that it is all well, and then I can go on further.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
it is visible, sir.
All is well. Please proceed, sir.
Thank you. And so you can see these are all cuttings. You on one end, you see there is a desolate feeling of what we call as disruption happening everywhere. On one side, India is recording the highest cases. It was just a couple of days ago we were looking at it. We saw jobs being lost, pay hikes being a question mark, and pay cuts being a possibility. And even it was so inhumane in some places, public even opposed funerals to be conducted. And this all prices started plummeting. All this was coming, because people always were having a struggle of fear and anxiety. I mentioned this in some time ago. There are two things which always put people out of their normal way of life is fear and anxiety, fear of unknown, and the anxiety associated with that is always a challenge. So that's the disruption which we see all around us. Now, what is the chaos which we could see? Perhaps this was a chaos which we could see around, people being their normal lives being affected, and they were unprepared. Perhaps some people were not prepared in the system to face these challenges. So there were a little bit of chaos going on, but still it was not something which could not be surmounted. But even if these things are planned, I feel organizations, individuals, nations, world can be better prepared to achieve better goals or better outcomes in the coming years. Now, I would like to start off with my acknowledgements first. I acknowledge His Holiness Jagadguru Sri Shivratri Deshikendra Mahaswamiji, who is the inspiring guide behind all my activities and the Chancellor of our university. And thank my JSS AHER leadership team. They are my, what you call as everything for me. The team is making me what I am doing today. And same way, I would like to acknowledge and thank Pharmacy Council of India and the team there for all the support they extend. And of course, to my family, but for their support, I will not be able to do things which I am doing, and all my friends who support me. And I have got no conflict of interest to declare here. Same way, I would like to also give my disclaimer. These are entirely my personal views and what I'm going to talk, and they are not associated with any of the organizations. And I do not have any political affiliation. So if I am mentioning leadership names here, please don't mistake me that I belong to one political party or other. No, I have got no political affiliations. They are just names, what I will be taking. And some of the images which I am using are from the open source at internet. So I would like to acknowledge all those people who have put those there, which has helped me to express my views here. And whatever comments, if I am making, hurts any sentiments, please excuse me for that. Right in the beginning, I am making it. It is not intentional, and it will be only inadvertent if it is there. With this, I move on with my topic, like the question Prashant asked me, inevitable disruption and preventable chaos. So let us look at what has the disruption we are talking about. Quite often when we speak of disruption, it shakes the foundation of the historical values and attributes which we have. I'll just give an example here. Like if you look at the COVID situation in India, particularly globally also, we have been very sort of a gregarious society. We try to live together in groups, and we shake hands, we hug each other. These are all have been a normal way of life. And suddenly we are telling, no, don't shake hands, don't be near each other, and it sort of shakes all our values which we have been looking at. So these type of, though they are small things, but these unprecedented disruptions do affect these historical values. I just gave you a simple example. There may be many such things which can happen. And only way to disrupt the disruption is to keep learning from it, unlearn and relearn all the time. This is the only key to disrupt the disruption itself. Study each disruption that happens, learn from it, unlearn, and see, try to how you can bring forward. With this message, let us look at what are the factors that cause this disruption. And these factors I have clubbed into six factors, but the six factors may encompass many more other things by themselves. First, I start off with place. Place means the world, the nation, the environment. You can put anything together, the place. The disruption can happen because of a place. It may be a volcano, it can create a disruption. So it's a place which affects which becomes the reason for the disruption which is there. Then second, it can be politics. Sometimes the political situation in a country can disrupt the whole life around it, the industry and everything. That can be another factor of disruption. The third is a product. Any new product that may come to a market suddenly can either make disruptive innovation which brought in, like we talk of today, mobile technology. It's a disruptive innovation that came in, which people never imagined a decade ago or 2 decades ago. It was unimaginable, but today it's a disruption. And products can be disruptive. They can be towards innovative, and they can be also destructive. Some of these new products which we talk, which are what you call as for the purpose of warfare, they can be destructive disruptions also they can create. Then people can be responsible also for creating a disruption. Like you have a wrong person in the particular position, he can create a disruption to the whole organization, to the nation, to the world, just because he has his own beliefs which does not merge with the society. It can create a disruption. People can be one of the factors. Then the policies which the big policy makers or lawmakers make can create a disruption. Today you feel you have got everything under control. Tomorrow you have got another policy coming in, and it creates a whole disruption in you. And last, of course, is the providence. And if you look at the providence, what I really mean is an act of God or act of nature, which is not in our control. But if we keep ourselves in compose, I think even this act of God or act of nature, at least the damage can be minimized if we are prepared for that. Now, what should be our approach for that? And approach for that is very simple. You have to predict you have to analyze and reduce the impact as far as possible, and remove the friction points that can be there in the process, and also fulfill the unmet need. This should be our basic approach. Like if the nation or an individual or organization can predict what possible disruption that may happen because of any of these 6 factors which you have told, and keep risk mitigation processes in their organization. Okay, if there is a policy change, still it will not affect me. If a person leaves, still my organization will not collapse. If a new product comes into the market, at least you will have definitely time to move on further. So these type of tendencies is required in that, and you should always keep looking at what is the unmet need which can cause a disruption, and maybe you should try to address it way ahead of time. Now, if you look at this disruption, and particularly if you look at the present the COVID challenge which we have, what type of challenges do they bring to us in this particular situation? The first one, like say, what was considered as a small infection taking place in one country, and which many other countries ignored, thinking that it is nothing related to it, it has affected the whole world now. It has become a pandemic. It has caused economic slowdown, or predicted being economic slowdown would be there. There are possibilities of being discussion as loss of jobs. There is lifestyle afflictions are there, work style changes are there, family distress is there, pre-existing morbidities are there. Education has been jeopardized in no way, no before time before this. For example, when people talk and compare with plague in 1918, and we talk of pandemic today, which is there of coronaviruses, in 1918, education was not disruptive because people could wait to get their education and move on. Today, the whole system of education is so affected. Like today, students who have appeared for 10th, 12th, and even their undergraduate who have appeared for the postgraduate entrance test, they all are waiting what will be their future, how they will move on with their life. So this type of challenge, which education itself has precipitated, is one single factor which you can say these disruptions can bring about. So what is the insurance? What is the disruption safe environment we should create is something which we should keep in mind, because the disruption may come in any form, as I said, and the more we are prepared, less impact it will make on us. So now let us look, how do we prevent this? I have told you about what are the factors that may cause disruption, and let me look at now what factors can help us to prevent the chaos or possible chaos that may happen, or prevent us from even going into having the full impact of disruption. Now, you have got examples across from the mythology or whatever you can call that. Like if you see here, the Noah's Ark, which is a part of our growing up, which we always have heard, that the God called Noah and said that there is going to be a rain and there is going to be floods. So you get prepared, build a big boat, and keep all the animals there and keep people there, so that he can save the world and those who have to be saved. And after the disaster or disruption has taken place, the world will go on. This is a typical example of preventing a chaos even after the disruption has taken place. Now, if you look at the other aspect of it, even in our Hindu mythology or Hindu religion, if you look, we all are familiar that how the Asuras and the gods, they fought with each other, and somebody had to gain the power, and only way was to have the Amrit. And for Amrit, both the people had to work together, and Shiva served as a leader there, and all this thing was worked out. I do not know what do you call it. You call it a strategy, you call it a plan, you call it an execution, you call it a leadership, you can call by any names. There was a disruption, and the disruption was strategized to move forward. Similarly, if you look at the Krishna, when he took up the whole mountain on his little finger to save the whole population. These are all examples which I am trying to quote, that disruption is not new, and preventing chaos that may happen is also not new. It has been there, only we have to learn from that. Now, there are two phases in which you can look at preventing chaos. First one is like, be prepared. I would put that way. You be prepared that if there is a possible disruption, how you can prevent chaos that may go along with that. And second is surviving the aftermath. In case if you did get affected, how you are going to be prepared to survive the aftermath. These are there. And for that, preventing chaos, again, I come back to a 6-point, like I told, 6 factors of disruption. I'm telling you 6 factors or 6 points for also preventing chaos. And these 6 points are vision, strategy, plan, team, execute, evaluate. So you may keep asking me how this is going to be true in different days. I'll try to show you examples and factors. How do we move forward and go? And if you look at these factors, now let us take the vision first. Now, if you look at even this example of the present COVID situation, to have a strong vision of what you want to achieve to prevent chaos that is going to happen in the event of disruption, these are again the 6 points which you should keep in mind. One, the knowledge about whatever you are, what disruption is going to be there, and the strategy you are going to plan should be very clearly visible. You should be able to inspire and take people with you. You should be very ambitious. You should have clarity in what you are going to do. You have to be inclusive, and you have to be transparent. I'll just give you here one example. Like in India, the COVID situation was expected somewhere in early March itself. So what was the vision country put immediately forward? Acquired the knowledge that is required for managing this disease, how it is going to be there. And then the leadership decided to inspire people, like let's do it, let's fight, and let's make a plan that can prevent our country from destruction and disruption. Then we were very ambitious. We'll say we'll quarantine, we'll try to put the whole country for lockdown. Let us see how we can do it. There was clarity. We said, yes, this may bring us economic challenges. It may bring us certain things. How do we bring in foreign investments? How do we do it? These were all the things which the vision of the country presented itself. Then they wanted to be inclusive. So they said, everybody get on board, no problem. We don't worry that the A person or B person, everybody is needed to help the country to move forward. All the states, all the state leadership, irrespective of across the political affiliations, they all got together to see how they can fight together. And there was a transparent approach. Today, I think no country in the world is as transparent as in India, that the data were available to you on minute to minute from every site you want to see. You will have the data of the COVID situation which is there. So this is the vision which was projected, that how we are going to do it. Now, what was the strategy with the country planned for it? The strategy the country planned was, let us plan for the unplanned. That is, first they said, let us bring in international collaboration. Let us talk to our neighbors. So there was a meeting of the SAARC. There was collaborations with other countries, helping the countries who were in distress at that time, though India was not in distress. All these things were a part of our strategy, which we put together, that in the event India needs, we should try to do it. Now, next is responding to change. Now, these things may bring certain economic challenges. So finance and growth also was kept in mind. And the central bank or the Reserve Bank came into play, looking at different policies which is there. Maximize outcomes, second. Then third, that is, we know that we have a healthcare facility, but this healthcare facility may not be the best we have. But how do we maximize out of it was a strategy, whether it is medicines, whether it is a personal protection equipment or the infrastructure. Again, there was a strategy put together. How do we maximize the outcomes of whatever we have? Let us not leave it and go the way. Then next is risk mitigation. In the risk mitigation, we reached out to people. We started communicating to them, telling that now we have to avoid the risk at any cost, and you have to help us. And that was the best way when we brought people in, and we did it. And even sometimes we need to do what we call as self-disruption. The country decided to disrupt itself by going for a total lockdown. Now, this is a strategy. Now, you might find this individually as different items happened at different periods of time, and you might have not connected the dots. But if you see now, all this was a strategy which was put in place, and that is how things have moved forward. Now, any strategy to be successful, you need to have a team. And unless the team is not going to be good, you are going to have a big problem at your hand. Now, if you look at the option of the team, what do you need in a team? You obviously need a leader in the team. You have to have an expertise there. You have to have a cohesion in the team. You need commitment in the team. You need resources for the team to carry out its activities, and the research. When I talk leader, I will be speaking a little more about leader later. Expertise. Now, who are our people who can correct a particular situation? If you look at the COVID situation, yes, we need experts in health who are good, who are knowledgeable, and get them on board. What do they have to say? Form a team of experts who can guide us throughout. Cohesion. The team should be able to work together. They should be able to talk to each other, not talk at each other. And these teams at the central level, at the state level, district level, individual level, all work together to bring a cohesion. And commitment. Everybody was made to commit themselves that yes, it's important, right from the security guard or the police cop who's at the streets to the top physician, top politician, top leader, top bureaucrat. Everyone committed that this is our challenge and we need to address this. Resources. When I mean resources, it's not only money. It can be anything. It can be about information. It can be the infrastructure you have. All these things have to be mobilized to put the teams together. And research. Research means I'm not talking of laboratory-based research. The research behind every action which you do, whether it is justifiable, whether it is doable, and whether it is implementable, and if so, what type of and all this needs to go back in a team's effort. So this again is a COVID example I give, but I would like to extrapolate it later on to other things. But this is, since it is all of us are in the middle of this, I try to show that. Now, if you talk of leader, we have different leader. Again, what I put is the team is as good as it is leader. If the team has to be good, the leader has to be good. And quite often what happens is whenever we have these type of meetings, I ask the audience, who makes a good leader for you? Whether it is the vision, which makes some people come out with the vision, some people
Audience, please hold on. I think there could be some technical
an example how good a leader is to be if you want to have an effective team. Now, if you look at the characteristics of a leader, what characteristics you require or what type of leaders you need, definitely leaders make a difference. I said you need, I told you about the leader, definitely leaders are required to be there. What types of leaders you need in this country? Or anywhere else for that matter, any organization for that matter. There are 4 types of leaders I tell. One is a strong leader, then second is a strategic leader, then third is a struggling leader, and fourth one is a stumbling leader. Now, I don't have an opportunity to have a dialogue, otherwise I would have asked you to tell and name the pictures and tell who do you match with that, but I will just go ahead and tell you that, if you look at Ms. Frederiksen, who is the Prime Minister of Denmark, she is a very, very strong person. She took a very strong decision that the country will go for a lockdown very early, even before many of the European countries could even think of it. And as a result of her action today, Denmark is the least affected country in the Europe, and she has been able to move forward. Very strong person, and such strong persons are good when the country is small. You are able to bring things together. A strong leadership works. Now, if you talk of a country of 1.2 billion people, being strong alone, it's not going to be enough. You have to have strategy. So we have a strategic leader required who can look at different things at different places at the same time and try to bring that together, bring the team together, tell them, yes, we have to do it. We have to have a strategy and put these together. You need a strategic leader who can pull everyone, the world, the nation, the people, everybody together. You need a strategic leader. Now, such leader, I don't want to again mention a name. As I said, I don't want to talk of any affiliation. Our nation is proud of the strategic leader we have, and we have been able to move forward because of the strategies which we have been able to move forward. Now, if you look at the example of struggling leader, I would come to our WHO Director General. He is a great leader, but his weakness is he is dependent on other countries' resources for the organization to carry out his own responsibilities. Now, when you are dependent on other countries' resources, and if you are neither strategic nor strong, then you will be struggling. And that's what we found in the middle. Though things were happening good in the beginning, but in the middle, the phase of struggle came for such leadership because you did not have the right type of information to share. You did not have the right type of reason to share. That whatever the failures, if any, have been pointed out towards the leadership there, it needs to be really looked into, because again the idea was that you are dependent on others to make the thing. So that is a struggling leader. Now, regarding stumbling leader, I don't want to talk more, and you know what is there, and you go and shoot your mouth off and come back, and then tomorrow change another status. So we don't need that type of leaders anywhere at all, particularly in any organization that would like to succeed. Having talked to you about leadership, now let us look at what should be the plan that leadership or the team should put together. Now, if you look at the plan that the team has to put together, and if they have to talk about preventing chaos, Now they should always think of two types of plans. One is should be a short-term plan. Now, how do I address this problem which I am having in hand, and what would be long-term strategy? Okay, today there was a challenge of COVID, from classroom teaching to online. Institutions, a quick short-term plan which went into place to see that the country is able to move forward. Then next is these should be time-bound and with milestones, because if you have a short-term plan running for 5 years and long-term plan has got no end to see, then I think these plans will be go out of pictures. Now, another thing is these plans need to be realistic, reproducible, and also scalable. Because if you create a plan of, say, putting a testing of labs of COVID in a particular state, so you have to have the capability to do that. It should be realistic. Then can it be reproducible? Can it be done again and again in the thing? Now, if you want to scale it, can you do it across the country? Can you do scale up and create more centers such that? So these plans should be there when you are making a plan and ready. I'm just giving as an example. Same way if you look at education. Let us say you should be realistic. Yeah, I am shifting within 1 week from the classroom teaching to online teaching. Fine. Now, will you be able to do it every day after day after day after for the 1 month or 2 months that you are going to be disrupted? So reproducibility is important. Then can you scale it? You might have started with one course or one program to start with. Can you run this for all the programs that you are running in your college or in the university? So these are the scalable structures which you have to think in mind. I'm just giving you as an example. And these plans should be able to transcend period and time. Why I'm telling this is because this plan you are not doing only for yourself for today. Now, if your plan is good enough, even 10 years from now, there is another disruption. The plan should be able to carry forward all these good things which you have done for the next disruption to be prevented. And if you plan ahead, even the disruption would be avoided. So these type of things should be very clear that when you're making a plan, it should be not time bound for this particular time we are doing it. Tomorrow we will see how it will be moving further. Now you have a team, you have a leader, you have a plan, you have a strategy, fine. But now if you don't execute it, we all will have our coffee, tea in the meetings and go back with that. I don't think it is going to be a success. So you have to execute that. So for executing, first and foremost is fixed responsibility. And once you fix the responsibility, that particular individual becomes responsible to achieve and bring that outcome which is required. If you don't fix responsibility, there will be no outcomes which you can expect to come out of your plan. Then know your SOPs. Everyone should know, every member of the team should know what the other person is expected to do so that they are all in tandem with same ideas and move forward. If training is required, that training should be provided. Retraining should be done. We cannot stop telling that, oh, we have given one-time training how to test the kits. So that is good enough. But he may be learned the one time wrongly, and you'll be repeating the same experiment wrongly for all the time, and we'll be getting wrong results. But if he is trained and again retained after 2 weeks, then he will realize, oh, I have done a mistake somewhere here. So let me try to correct it and make a better outcome. Discipline. Now, once the leader says, once the team says, and once the plan is placed, everybody has to follow. There should not be question of telling, why don't we do like this afterwards? Why don't we do like this? Should be before you put the plan in place. And once the plan is approved, it is done. It is a very strong discipline is required in moving forward. Of course, when we have certain challenges during evaluation period, we can realign. But the discipline is in the following what you have to do it. Then next is always when you are carrying out an activity, data play a very, very important role. You should not miss the data out. And data should be available, whether it is a classroom teaching, whether it is a COVID testing you are doing, or making availability of the beds in the country. If you do not have the data, how many beds are available? We all see in newspaper, oh, we have got 60,000 beds in railways. Yes, 60,000 berths may be there. But how the 60,000 beds have been filled, that data have to be verified and it should be measurable by certain means. So these things help us to move it. And we have to map the effectivity of the plan which we have done. We should not wait, oh, let us all complete the plan and then we will see whether it is successful or not. Keep mapping the goal, whether you have been able to achieve that or not. And the same thing I have shown here in this column regarding COVID situation, how we try to control the COVID situation. We put a plan together and we executed that. There will be surveillance at the entry points. There will be community surveillance. There will be laboratory testing. There will be laboratory bed, bed strengths will be available. Ramp up the production of medicines. Public communication and engagement. All these were put together, and we could bring international thing and brought the world's biggest lockdown. This is because of the good execution of a plan that was there. If this execution was not there and we were only talking, then we would have been in a very different situation. Now, this is what a leader does, takes everybody together on board. I'm just trying to show again how, in spite of being across the different parts of the state, each state being in crisis, each state being afflicted, each state being having its own problems relating to technology, resources, people, situation, political situation, but all the leaders got together and said, yes, let us sit and listen. And same way, the national leaders sat together and discussed with them, how is the situation and how do we manage? So this is a very important requirement, I would like to say. When you have a team, you have a plan that is doing, if you are not going to frequently go on discussing what is happening, you will not know what is the progress that is happening in the end of the day. So that is very, very important to know that the leader is connected with the team at all the times and the team is able to reach back to the leader if there is a crisis and try to solve those issues then and there. Now, last step in any such success story is the evaluation. Now, if you do not have evaluation going, then I feel whatever you have done will be lost in process of doing it. So for evaluation of any activity, whether it is classroom teaching or COVID testing or COVID management situation, evaluation at the end is very, very important. And for that, collation and comparison, collect keeping the data and compare. Compare how you have done this week to next week to next week. Compare how you have done and that the neighboring state has done. Compare how you have done as a country and how the other country has done. So this is very important to keep evaluating yourself. Then interpretation. Then if you have the data, you have to interpret and see how this is going to make a difference to the whole planning. Then improvements. If the plans have not gone well, I told you earlier, if there is something challenging, we can always make an improvement on the information. And one weak point always we challenge in our country is data integrity. So I would like to emphasize here, anything which we do, don't do a false data because that gives us false results. And false results can create a big chaos to the organization, to the country, to the world. Let us say, if as an organization, if some false information or false data are available to me today, and on the basis of which if I am planning some expansion, and if the whole structure will collapse, it will not only affect the organization, but it will affect all the people associated with that. So data is very, very important. It is better to be honest and negative rather than being what you call as dishonest and trying to give positive or rosy picture. And extrapolation and future directions. These are a part of our evaluation process. Sorry, I am taking a longer time because it's something which is very passionate to me. So I hope you will stand with me for another 10 minutes. I'll try to wind up with that. Now, I am just trying to tell you, okay, sir, you have given a wonderful talk. Okay, Suresh, you have given a very good talk. Are you able to do it in your own organization is what you would have easily asked me when I am across. So I am just giving you as an example, okay, what did we do at JSS Academy of Higher Education? We knew somewhere around the 15th or 16th, there may be a challenge which we may be facing or even a little earlier. And we started talking about it. What should be our strategy? So one was on the academic side, what steps we should do in the academic side. Another side was we had a medical hospital which is there, how the hospital has to equip. Third is how to look out at the welfare of our staff and students, what plan should be put together. Then next was how to look at the research that can go in hand with that to help whatever the country's situation may be there. All these four aspects were kept in mind. The possibility of working together was planned, how the strategies would go, the how to innovate, how to motivate, how to organize, what type of leadership is required, all that was put together, and this plan went through together in the phase that all these 4 units of our plan are functional. We have today academic programs going on. We have our hospital which is ready to take off any type of challenge that may come in the region to support. Our research is going strongly. We are working on technology-based research. We are looking at repurposing of drug. We are working on some of the issues, but we do not want to simply say we have done this and that. But the idea is that once we have something tangible, we will definitely give out to the society that can benefit. And lastly, looking at welfare and outreach, our major concern has been how we can safeguard the interest of the staff and students. That was our primary concern, and we did that well, and all our staff and students are safe. Even those who are residing in hostels and on campus, we have made sure that their safety is well assured on the system. So this type of planning we put together as early as mid-March, and what we did after the COVID situation was only implemented. And I'll just show only one issue, like how did we address academic alone, to give you as an example that how a strategy and plan can work together. What we did was that our vision was what? In the education, learning will never stop here at JSS. Whether it is now or future, learning will never stop. So how do we go forward for that? That was our vision. Second vision was no student shall be left behind. However remotest place he may be living, we should not do it. We should lead by example. That is, if we want others to do it, we should try to do it ourselves first. So our team also is working on that. Collaborate with others. We don't believe that we should do alone ourselves. We should do it. We collaborate with our other organizations and try to see how best practices we have developed benefits others and how their best practices helps us. And next is be impactful. Whatever we do, we should do that it benefits and impacts the society and the stakeholders which is for that. So this was our vision. And now looking at that, then we carried out a swap of education. How do we do? Our education before us was that we should transition from physical education or physical mode to the virtual mode. How do we do that? Classroom teaching to virtual transition. So if you look at that one simple example, we said, what are our strengths? We had already a digital platform. We had an IT team. We had already started our online education system for a couple of programs. So these were our strengths. What were our weakness? How do we manage clinicals and practicals? What about examinations? What about the statutory regulations? What will Pharmacy Council say? Medical Council say about these things? What would UGC say? Opportunities, we had a robust online education. Maybe this will become wider. This was an opportunity for us. If we strengthen here, our online education can become more stronger and robust. We can reach out to the world. Now we may be reaching out to the country. Now we can reach out to the world if we go strong on the virtual mode. Then increasing our portfolio, we can have a large number of programs. These were the opportunities that in front of us. So that convinced us we should leverage our strengths and try to overcome the weaknesses and move forward. What would be the threat we felt? The threat was whether the faculty would be committed to do that. Whether faculty will agree to move from physical mode to online mode. Whether the student will accept that. What about the internet reach? These were the 4 challenges which we felt were the threats, and we overcome that by committing the faculty and supporting them, training them. Now they are enjoying it. Students have a wider acceptance. Today we have 94 to 98% attendance in all the sessions. So these are all some of the things, and internet reach has been very, very minimally impairing the whole system, which I would like to mention here. It is there. Now with this type of SWOT, then we went with a plan. Then we put a plan together, put all our structures. We had a team set together. We executed by training faculty, procuring licenses, scheduling classes. And not only that, we put a quality assurance team to play a role, that they should keep monitoring whether what we are doing is in the right direction. And they are our independent third-party evaluator for us in whatever we are doing. And reporting takes place every week. Now, the evaluation is the process. Now, how much curriculum has been completed? What type of assignments and assessments that have been done? How do we now move on with the examination systems? Now, what do we do to engage the students? What type of feedback we have got? How do we realign? So these are the steps which we are doing. And this is a typical one strategy which I talked about education. I know there are some stakeholders from industry who are also there on the on this talk. So I thought I should make one more case example for the from the point of industry. Now, post-pandemic, what should be the industry strategy is a question which people have been asking me. So how the pharma sector would be able to respond. So I keep telling that, that there are infinite opportunities. We have to utilize them. Now, if you look at such opportunities that may be available to you, I would like to say that, first, if you look at the strength, India has a very good reputation for its generics medicines, its human resource. It has got very large number of FDA approved facilities. We have the technological advantage, and we are able to have the reputation of making medicine at the lowest cost. What are our weakness? We don't invest in R&D. We have an impact of API and technology. We always try to import from wherever it is cheaper to manage the costs of medicine. We have a supply chain management issues. Now, for example, even if the industry has to work as per the direction of thing with 30%, 40% capacity, and let us say the supply chain system not functioning, even if they manufacture, that will not reach the stakeholder. Now, data integrity issues. Then we have the unstructured regulatory support. What I mean unstructured regulatory support is that you do not know definitely how the regulatory policies that are existing would not disrupt your planning which you are doing. Suddenly there can be a disruption. So this is one of the anxieties always with the industry which they feel. Now, opportunities, now the world is going to look at pharma sector from India. You want to sell, you can sell anywhere in the world now. Your exports are going to become very high. Your imports are going to be very minimal because the industry in India is going to look at strengthening its own capability in the coming months and years. Then increased sourcing of medicines or from the developing countries will happen. And the growth which is already there in double digit will be further strengthened. And health and prime proximity, health the prime priority of all the governments. Today, if you look, every government in the world is talking about health as a particular issue. What are the threats? Poor investment in the R&D. I come back, and second is poor investment again in the human resource. Today, the industry quite often looks at hiring somebody at lower cost to manage things that, okay, we have the technology, we have the system, but why do we need a person paying very high? You have to keep in mind always the old saying, if you pay peanuts, you'll get only monkeys to work. So you have to have the right type of people to carry out the work which you want. You have poor advocacy and collaboration. We do not try to communicate to the government or our visibility to others in the other platforms. Again, pricing of products and manufacturing costs are a continuous challenge in our country. We have multiple regulatory systems in our country, and we have a scientific data inadequacy. You may have a new idea, but you don't have data to support it. So these are the things. Now, if an industry wants to solve this, what do they need to do? So all the industry has to do is to form a team which is multifaceted. They should know what business they are talking about. They should be ambitious. They should not be very, simple and say, okay, fine, we have done this. They should be specialized. Each one of them should be specialized in their field. They should be transparent and they should be holistic. If you look at this MASTH, it is a must. I say you have a must team, you can achieve anything which you can want in life. Now, if you look at execution, I mentioned 2-3 weaknesses. One is research. Now, I don't expect a small industry to carry out a research on its own. So you identify an institution which is ready to collaborate with you. It can be a research organization or an institution where you can collaborate. Make small investments, look at what is outcome, and keep further strengthening your activities. Expand your portfolio and realign if needed. Risk mitigation structure should be there in every organization. How to avoid risk, whether it is all the 6 things. How do you avoid those 6 things which I mentioned? People, product, price, policy, and all those things which I mentioned should be kept in mind. Then once you have the team execution and evaluation, then you do how to achieve. I didn't touch on the vision, strategy, and plan because of the time and constraint, but I am sure every industry worth its metal, they know about all these issues, but we can have a longer discussion on industry maybe on some other day. Now, one of the issues which I always feel would be a challenge which is coming, it's a very complicated thing and I'm not going to spend time on this, is that, one of the major challenges which is going to come is disruption in different forms presently, because we are not prepared. First one foremost would be the social disruption. Second would be the financial disruption. And third would be the family and lifestyle disruption, which will all lead to only the physical and mental disruption which may happen. If physically and mentally disturbed population is going to be around, then the progress and growth is going to be challenged. The same thing applies to your organization, to your house and everything. So first thing which I would like every organization worth its is to make sure when the people come back, to see how you can morally and physically support them from the point of bringing them onto the normal phase of life. They might have had different challenges in their time of lockdown. So you have to understand and be what you call as be understanding and helpful to them, and not overbearing on them and trying to tell them, okay, now get on to work, you enjoyed your 1 month holiday, now you come back and work. And it's not a holiday for anyone. It's always so much disruptive the whole life. It can never be treated as a holiday for them. Now, I would like to put this question to you, all of you individually, like, you all are there. You all have gone through the process. I have gone through the process. Now, if you ask honest questions to yourself, that how has the disruption affected you? Has it affected you at all? If yes, then how it has affected you? Has it altered your idea of success? Were you aiming something big and because of disruption you feel, no, I am not worried, I'm scared now to do it. Now, have your goals changed because of the disruption? What was that you have lost in this process? You lost your self-confidence, you lost your health, you lost your disturbance or stress in the family. What is that was the problem which you faced? What have you gained? So since you had opportunity to lose something, you also would have gained something in the process. So what have you gained? Please look for that. What did you gain there? Has it changed your confidence in yourself? If it has changed your confidence in yourself, that is the beginning of failure. So you have to make sure that you are back with your full confidence, disruption or no disruption. I'm going to take the world with my best foot forward is the approach you should have. And do you have a reason to believe that you cannot recover? Again, this is very dangerous. If you have got a reason to do not believe, then you should find a right mentor, right advisor, and try to see that how you can recover from this challenge which you have got. I was once mentioning to one of my colleagues, who expressed to me, sir, you are my mentor. I said, a boss cannot be a mentor, because the boss always would look at an organization's success. Boss can be a mentor, but always his priorities would look towards organization and so if you're looking at your boss as a mentor, I think you have to look at thing that how much of it is going to impact his own organization where he's working before he takes such a decision. So now I put it here I have given this picture. The opposite of courage in the 21st century is cowardice, not cowardice. People used to tell what is the opposite of courage in courage, they used to tell cowardice. But in 21st century, it is the conformity. We just blindly follow what people say. No, don't blindly follow. You make your own decision, make your analysis and move forward. I would like to end by telling, plan for the unplanned in life. I keep telling that. And this does not come by a simple process. It comes by training. If you look at a kingfisher which wants to catch a fish, you will find it will not jump into the water at every fish it sees. It will be waiting on the branch, or it will be looking, flying above and seeing. And only when it finds the right time and knows that it can attack, it will dip in, catch its fish, and it will come out at the stroke of the moment. So if you do not try to wait and watch and do things, then you may end up with nothing but some water in your face. So it's very important, and don't be afraid of failures. Failures are not really going to be impacting you. They are only efforts that have not succeeded. So you try again, you will be successful. And lastly, I would like to say here that I'm very thankful to the vision which the organization has given me to move forward. I always say that the vision which I have is the vision which the organization gave it to me. And this is again my own quote which I put together. One of the good things that have happened in this COVID period is that I have started writing certain poems and other things. So this came up suddenly seeing this picture. I say that where there is vision, there is knowledge. And where there is knowledge, there is courage. And where there is courage, there is success. Thank you very much for your patience. I'm sorry I took a very long time, but I thought I was so excited I should give all the things to you rather than cutting it off. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Indeed, what a wonderful session it has been, sir. And plan for the unplanned in life. There are no failures, only efforts. What a wonderful message you have given. And first of all, I congratulate you on the wonderful presentation you have done. You have not taken a minute more than what you were supposed to. And well, there has been a lot of complimenting messages from all our participants to you, sir. When you were presenting, there has been thousands of messages who were telling that this was an excellent presentation, a different perspective of what is seen in today's world. And everybody are asking if you could kindly share this video, which is being recorded in parts, to all of them. And the messages are, they are keeping on pouring. And with your permission, sir, if I may ask few questions which the participants have forwarded to you.
Sure, it will be my pleasure, please.
Sir, much of the people have been very positive in their responses, and they have taken the positive message what you have given as well. And one of the questions what started was, what are the positives of the pandemic on the education? How do you foresee education in the days to come?
See, I would not call it as a positive of pandemic because, pandemic is bad. So I cannot say that I got something good out of pandemic because it was not there. We have tried to adapt and move on. So maybe you can look that as a positive. One of the things is, we have now believed as an organization that teaching not necessarily has to be done in the physical classroom. It can be done from anywhere. Now we have started accepting that teachers not necessarily have to be present in the classroom to teach. They can teach from home also, and they can effectively teach. And students have been responsive because they are learning at their pace. Whereas in the classroom situation, they are forced to come at a particular time, place, and do it, and which they do not like. No young mind wants conformity. They want to be disruptive. They said, why should I do it? So that is the thing. So the young minds have started liking, oh, this is a nice way of learning, and I can be relaxed, I can be chilled, so I can still learn my things, and I can study. This is there. So this has come. So what impact it would do on education is, we will have to accept two things. One, classroom teaching would be supported with certain off-classroom teaching also, remote teaching or online teaching, whatever you call it, in different ways. That will be a part of it. So blended way of education is going to be there. The second part would be to the whole process of education is, the teacher's output is going to be now visible across all the platforms, because when you are online, everybody has got the opportunity to look in what you are doing. So unless you are not going to be good, you are not going to be accepted. You will straight away find people walking out of your classroom here because he is not obliged to see it here. So this will be the impact which I feel, and definitely this will bring a different type of dimension to the education as well.
Sir, we have grouped these questions, whatever we have received, into particular segments. And since we are now into the discussion on education, let me take some more questions which have been pouring down now for your talk. What is the economic and financial implication on education? So we have been talking about financial and economic implications on the society.
Yes, it's a very important fact question. See, in fact, what I would like to say is the impact is going to be that this year, straight away, it is one of my particular things which I say is, the admissions are definitely going to be affected, because when something is delayed, it is going to be denied to you. There is a saying in the legal parlance, justice delayed is justice denied. So here I would like to put it, education delayed for your student is going to deny him the opportunity of taking the best. So he would say, okay, I have lost something now, let me wait and do it next year properly. So this would be the reaction of many of the people. So this disruption would be there. Second is, the paying capacity is going to be affected. So people, unless they are not going into the right type of course or right type of institution they want to go, they would not venture into spending the money and try to do it. So paying capacity is going to be affected. So if these two are affected, automatically the economic situation of the education is going to be a challenge. And these challenges will continue to be there in future. Now, what every institution should try to do is to develop what we'll call as a disruption-free corpus or disruption-safe corpus now. So certain percentage of fees you should try to see that you are keeping it on board, so that in case you have got a weak year, 2 to 3 months, 6 months, you should be able to support yourself and move forward with the education. Because any industry collapses, same is true with education, is when you do not have the right type of money to spend. Once you do not have that money to spend, the whole structure starts falling. So I think this is very, very important for any institution. They should. I put that statement there because of the paucity of right now. I use this word like disruption free or disruption safe environment or corpus should be created.
So moving on to the questions on leadership, we have had many questions about faculty commitment being the threat. Many of them have asked, yes, of course, taking the faculty as a group and leading them is, of course, a difficult task. They want to know what has been your experience and how did you turn around that panic situation into productive contribution from all your faculty?
See, anything is very important is first a teacher follows you is how good you are, then the teacher also will believe you. So you have to equip yourself before you go and tell anybody else. I keep telling this to my colleagues, right from not now, right from the beginning days, I used to tell them, okay, the pharmaceutical chemistry teacher has gone. So no problem, I will go and teach that. So I used to prepare, go and teach. So once you know that you can do it, I think then everybody falls into place. Well, the boss is equipped, so he will guide us, he will help us and move forward. So it is very important. Giving direction and walking away is not going to be there. Suppose in case of not being able to achieve certain things, are you able to handhold them? Are you going to just fire them and tell them, no, you go off, you cannot do anything like that? That's what I said. The capacity to hold together the team, that is very important. Holding the team will come when people trust in you, that you are going to be look after their welfare, you are going to save them, you are going to help them. So that trust has to come in the leader. So then only, okay, like Dr. Kalam is a leader, he used to always tell when something failed, he stood in front and tell that I failed, is not my team that failed. So that type of capacity one should have.
We have a very interesting question, sir, and this question is intriguing me as well. And I'm anticipating a very good response from you for this. As an anticipatory executor of your plan, how did you ensure that when you did not know what would happen to your plan of action, because everything was unpredictable, but inevitable? So how did you manage to overcome the chaos? How did you manage to get the results of your plan? Was there any strategy behind your brains in that?
Yes. See, what happens is it is not that we should keep watching what is happening around you and learn from that. So that's what I said. Learn, unlearn and relearn. That's what I mentioned. See, when this situation started in China and Europe, there were a lot of challenges that were starting there. And I was closely watching them, what they are doing. And same thing when in the United States, this situation started in December and January, and New York was getting affected in a very big way. I saw what universities were doing there, why they were doing it. There must be some reason, some predictability that might have been there for them to behave in a particular way. They knew ahead of time that the semester will be closed up to June or July. And they even closed the institution straight away, telling the students, go home, we are going to get within 115 days or online. So they must have had some very ground strong thing. If you do not have the equipment to do research, if you do not have wherewithal to do research, look from what the others are doing. They would have obviously done some good research before they do it. Same thing applies to a company. If a particular company is investing into a newer technology, they are making big money into investing big, there must be something reason. They would have done research. You don't have to do a research yourself to take such a decision. You can see how you can adapt and move forward. So learn from what others are doing is the best way to move forward.
Thank you very much, sir. Now moving on to the last set of questions which we have compounded together. Post-lockdown, Many people are asking, what is your personal view about what do you expect in the further days to come? Is there any compounding of the chaos that is expected to happen post lockdown?
No, fortunately, in India, I do not expect that to happen because India has got always the capacity to quickly rebound. We adjust very quickly and move forward. We are not stuck to certain particular ways of life. We always have find a way how we can move forward with the life. That's one part of it. Second is the fortunately we have a government that is responding and listening and working and taking every action, whether it is the pharma industry, whether it is education, whether it is the financial issues, whether it is agriculture, whether it is employability. All these things are being looked at. It's not a structure or a place which is not bothered about what happens to the society. There are a couple of countries which they said, "What can I do? I can't help anything." It's up to them to make a decision. So we are not like that. Our country is doing something good. So I don't find an aggravated chaos happening. All the things are in place. All this required from the government from our side is that we cooperate and follow certain disciplinary or disciplined pathways. I think we should be able to come out. Particularly the education sector, I would appeal that, even though we may reopen, we have to make sure that we are able to make include several safe practices, and then that safe practices should be able to help us move forward.
Well, I'll take the last question now, sir. And this last question is actually a big chunk of question which I had just agglomerated from over almost all the participants throughout the world. And most of them, they are saying that pharmacy and the pharmacy industry has played a very vital role and a very major role in this present crisis. What do you see for them in the future? Is it that they are going to have an economic or a financial or a social roadblock in the future? How are you going to predict it, and what will be the way further?
See, the pharmaceutical industry is set to grow. The opportunities are there. How they use the opportunities is left to the every individual industry. And that's why when I spoke about the industry, I said they have to have a plan now where they would like to see and how they are going to come out. Now, if the team thinks that, okay, now I have lost my sales in the last 3 months, I have continued to pay my staff in spite of the sales being low. My productivity has come down. How I am going to manage? If they already have that thoughts in their mind, then how are they going to overcome and manage that? What is the strategy? Whether they are going to increase their production capacity, they are going to increase their portfolio, are they going to bring in some what you call as a path breaker into their portfolio, which can generate the additional cost and this thing which is going to be there. That look at the opportunities around now. Like if somebody is manufacturing hydroxychloroquine, you go on, everybody starts manufacturing hydroxychloroquine. And suddenly the pandemic is over. You are dumped with millions of doses of hydroxychloroquine, and you'll have to wait for malaria to happen. And if it doesn't happen, everything goes down the drain again. So I think you have to watch and do the right thing is what I would like to put it.
Thank you so much, sir. And it brings us to the end of this session. And it's been very heartening to see thousands of participants. The numbers, how many they were in the beginning, the same they are even now. And thank you so much for this very enlightening message of yours. And I should compliment, and we have received many compliments about this as well in the message, about the way you have used the PowerPoint in a different way. It's been excellent. And with your permission, sir, may I request our Vice Chancellor, sir, Dr. Surendra Singh, sir, to please say a few words about this session before we wrap up.
Thank you, Dr. Prashant. At the outset, I would like to congratulate Dr. B. Suresh, our Honorable Pro-Chancellor, for excellent presentation. Like, I was very eagerly looking forward to another more than 1,200 participants who are now basically a part of this webinar. I think we all must have been very anxious because I felt the same way, that what sir is going to speak about in this inevitable disruption and preventable chaos, and what all areas he's going to touch upon. Because now I have worked with him for last over 4 or 5 months. I know this is the first time I had an opportunity. I've known him for more than a decade, but it's the first time I had an opportunity to work with him at a very closer range. And what I found is that he's an excellent visionary, a philosopher, academician, leader, power excellence. And he has got one quality which I think is like, it's not that you can have it overnight. That is ability to carry people along with him and to inspire their confidence and their trust in him. And this all happens because he is one leader who is easily approachable. It's not only to us as JSS Academy of Higher Education and Research. I think it transcends pharmacy profession. It other areas of walks of life also. Where I have interacted with the people, they have always had a word of appreciation for him. Now, carrying my views further about what we could gather from Sir's webinar, I think this was apt as far as today's times are concerned, when there are a lot of misconceptions, apprehensions, anxieties in the mind, how to handle this. And these disruptions might have overwhelmed the minds of many of us. But Sir has given a very clear-cut strategy that we should not be scared of disruptions. Disruptions are part of our life, and when they come, they touch upon each aspect of it. But rather than being overwhelmed by disruptions, we should have a well worked out strategy how to handle these disruptions. And with these, to handle this, the most important thing is to have a visionary leadership, and the leadership is as good as Sir said, as far as the team is concerned. And with this, they'll go with the other ingredients like there should be discipline, there should be execution of the plan, and the last thing which very much emphasized, there should be continuous evaluation of our exercise with this. And Sir has touched upon various factors which go in enabling us to handle the disruption. He has given examples of the various leadership across the world, that how they have handled this disruption, and how others, they have struggled or stumbled upon when this disruption has come. So what are do's and do nots? I think it was very nicely captured by Sir, and very lucidly, I think he took us through this presentation. And I would say over here that when a person speaks, he carries the value system of the culture and the organization from where he comes from, because that impinges and touches upon each and every fabric, the molecule of the individual. And that Sir I think, very humbly gave the credit to JSS Academy of Higher Education and the visionary leadership of His Holiness, because these are the value systems which are deeply ingrained in our JSS Academy of Higher Education Research. And when Sir was speaking on this webinar, and the way he was carrying it through as a part of JSS family, I felt very proud of it. I think the same way all people who must have watched this and been a part of it, this webinar, would have felt the same way, because we are all a family and we are all together in this our efforts to overcome this chaos because of disruption. But I would say I'll be failing in my duty. Dr. Prashant mentioned it in a fleeting manner, the various messages which were flashing on the screen from the participants who were again and again expressing their appreciation. So I captured some of them. I think I will be indulgent. There might be some repetition of it. And I'll just repeat 4 or 5 of them. One was very informative session, interesting, awesome, inspiring speech, wonderful, excellent session, helpful presentation, very effective. I think these are some of the expressions which I have captured, and they reflect the sentiments of all the people who have come together on this webinar. And the one which I feel is it's a very helpful presentation. It will help a lot of people, including me, to have a very clear strategy how we should be planning for future. Because as Sir said that we not only we should have a short-term plan or long-term plan, our plans should transcend time and period. Even 1 decade down the line, our plans, they should be workable and they should work. So with these words, once again, I express the sentiment of all the participants and express my profound gratitude on behalf of all of us for taking us through this excellent presentation, Sir, and touching upon very, very vital subject of today. And your webinar has cleared many of the misconceptions and apprehensions which we had in our mind. And we look forward to many such interesting webinars from your side, especially in this troublesome time. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sir, we have with us our Honorable Executive Secretary, sir, and he's been there with us from the beginning of this session, ardently listening to you. I request our Executive Secretary, sir, to say a few words on this platform, sir.
Good evening, everyone. It was a very good presentation. In fact, I joined the session actually at 5:25 only and started enjoying the good music also in the beginning. And Dr. Suresh has given a wonderful presentation. It was really structured and he has given so many examples also. The session, as mentioned by the Vice Chancellor, very informative and knowledgeable, inspiring and motivating. I have listened to his many leadership sessions also, and I was one of the participants also during those sessions. And in fact, it gives, analyzes the issues in a proper manner, takes the audience, he captures all the audience, and it's really wonderful. More than 1,200 participants, really wonderful. My hearty congratulations to Dr. Suresh, and thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, it's been very inspiring session by you, and as requested by many of the participants, I convey the request to you for having more such meeting, for conducting more such innovative and inspiring sessions. With that, thank you so much from all the participants, as well as JSS Academy of Higher Education and Research, JSS Mahavidyapita, and everybody who has been there here in this wonderful journey.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I am grateful to all of you for all the support you have been giving me all the time. And thanks to my audience or the viewers who were there for all the positive comments you have been doing. We'll continue to work, and both at professional level and at the organizational level, we'll continue to work and see that we are able to touch what our Vidyapita's philosophy is and Swamiji's vision is, touching the lives of millions. We'll try to do that and continue to work on that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
With your permission, I request the IT team, Dr. Ravindra, Chief Information Officer, to kindly end this session.
Thank you, Ravindra.